Alma here with Absolutely Fabulous Invitations, and I am going to be covering part 2 of our series on how to make your invitations fabulous at an affordable price. So, this one is going to be a little technical and maybe a little boring. I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as possible because what we're going to deal with today is your printing process and how that might add to your price depending on what you choose. Okay, so try to go through this quickly so I don't bore you to sleep. This gorgeous invitation is printed in what we discussed last time in part 1 as thermography printing, and it's kind of like your base price for this type of invitation. You've got a texture. I don't know if you can see any texture through the camera, but you can actually feel the ink on this. So it's a raised ink, and it definitely lets people know that you didn't print this off your home printer at home, that you did, take some time and made your wedding invitations gorgeous. But it is a modern counterpart to this, which is again a raised printing, which probably won't be able to catch on this camera. That is more expensive than this one. Reason being, printing process. Engraved invitations, thermography printed invitation. What's the difference? Process. Engraving essentially, and printing gurus do not attack me on this one because I'm just going to make it real simple for those of us who really don't care, can figure it out, why is the difference. Essentially, this is printed on an offset printer press, but the plate that creates where the ink goes is kind of like a overhead transparency. So it chemically alters the paper goes through the press, ink goes only on the chemically altered parts of it, and as it continues down the line, it is then powdered with a chemical which continues down the line and then goes through a little heater. And that heater causes the chemicals in the ink to rise, creating that textured feeling. So it's kind of like a plastic feeling when you touch it, and engraving is more like a rough feeling. And a lot of scrapbookers, they do this process themselves manually, but they call it embossing. But it's not embossing, it's heat. It's thermo printing, it's thermography printing. Embossing is this, where I know most everybody has seen this. It's raised printing, but it's done with only the paper. It's pushed from the back through the front, and it's generally blind embossing is what this is called, and that's gorgeous. And a plate is required for that. You have to create a plate in order to push that paper through. So an embossing, again, that's a little bit pricier of a printing process because you're creating a plate, which is the reason engraving is more expensive than thermography, though a lot of people can't tell the difference. Feels raised, feels raised. Engraving, in order to do this, it is the ink itself that you can feel. You don't need to add any, chemicals to it to raise it. This ink raises. The process of engraving is actually you engrave a plate, a metal plate. The ink gets deposited in here, and then it's literally forced into the page. It's like hammered into the page, which is why super paper snobs and printing snobs look at the back of the paper to look for the bruising to verify that this is an engraved invitation, which is a sign of quality. So, more expensive process, has to be done one at a time. You have to create an actual plate in order to do an engraved invitation. That's why a lot of times they'll say, is it engraved? And many times they won't know the difference because it's thermography printed. Less expensive process. So that's one way of keeping your price down, though keeping it gorgeous. Yet, sometimes this will only do for those who know, and sometimes this will only do for certain types of paper that can't go through the quick offset printer. One of those being what this belongs to, which is this pocket. This pocket, cute little pink pocket, and it's engraved, can you see that? In this silver. You can't put that through an offset press. It has to be done individually, one at a time, so it had to be engraved if it was going to be printed. The other thing too is, talk about something like this. It's a gorgeous invitation. I love this invite. This is an edged invitation because it is so thick. Can you see the bruising on this? Because this is literally a piece of wood. Not literally, but virtually a piece of wood. Because it is so thick, again, it can't go through the press process of the thermo, so it needs to be done individually. Have to create a plate. So things like this, again, remember we were talking about paper price, more expensive paper because of the thickness, and then a bit more expensive price of printing because of the process. So that's what's adding to this particular invitation of getting a little pricey and costly. Now, another process for printing this gorgeousness here. Let me get a little closer so you can see. Can you see the texture in that? La, la, la. This is what's called letter pressing. Letter pressing. So, kind of like the reverse of embossing, it is being pressed into the paper. Again, for something like this, you're going to need a plate. The process is not as inexpensive as thermography because they're done individually. And then, because you need a paper that is thick enough and soft enough to hold this imprint, the paper is more expensive. This is another edged card. So you're going to have a more expensive paper for your letterpress. So again, your letterpress, a lot of people were going crazy over them, but then not crazy over the price because they didn't understand that it's a more expensive paper, it's a more expensive process. So that's what causes it to go up a little bit in price when you see it. But there are certain things that you cannot get. You cannot get those looks with any other process. Okay, we've covered that. Now let's cover something that's super, super popular right now. Something that I think is so cool. Can you see that glimmer? That is foil. Gold's really, really, really popular right now. We're in October 2016 when we're doing this. So we're seeing a lot of gold foil, but gold foil comes in all kinds of colors. So cool. I love it. I wish I had an excuse to print something in pink foil. So foil, again, is another process where you have to create a plate because it's literally a sheet of foil that goes over this, and you're pressing that foil into the paper, pulling it off, and what stays behind is that sheet of foil. So that's a little bit pricier, but not as expensive generally as an engraved invitation or a letterpress invitation. But it is going to be most likely more expensive than your thermo because of that plate that you're creating. Alrighty? So now, things to take into consideration when you're choosing what type of printing to do. Sometimes some things that make a difference to our brides sometimes are color. And I have had brides choose a certain type of printing process because in that printing process the pink looks this way instead of in that process. And the same thing goes like with golds. With a gold, your foil, I mean, you got that gorgeous metallic. And if you do a gold in engraving, you've got this crazy, crazy metallic going on there. Check that out. I love that. But in thermography, if you do a gold, even though this is a really, really cute invitation, you don't really have too much, going on with the sheen. So it's kind of like depending on what each bride is wanting to accomplish, and no bride is the same, and no answer is the correct answer. It's just, what is that you're looking for, and what's a reasonable cost to you. So that's one reason why someone would choose one type of printing over another. Now, the last type of printing that we haven't covered yet is the latest technological innovation called digital printing. This is a digital print. Cute, save the date. We designed this for our bride. That was so much fun. I love my brides. So, your digital print is what you're going to see a lot nowadays online. One of the reasons is because you don't have a product, you only have a design, so the people putting it online, it didn't cost them anything because they never created anything except for a file, a computer file. And it doesn't exist until somebody orders it and you print it, and there it is. The other reason that it's super, super popular is because they look really great online, yet again, it's a thinner paper, because how I like to explain digital printing is it's a industrial sized copier, basically, because all these colors are being printed at the same time. Used to be we couldn't do this thing with a color copier. I mean, they charge you $1.50. How much was it for color copies back in the day when they were first invented? Something like this had to be printed on an offset printer. The same thing that we're printing our thermography printing with is an offset printer. And each color was printed one at a time. Your blue was printed, your yellow was printed, your red, magenta, cyan, CMYK. Those each were printed one run at a time. So in order for this to be reasonable by the piece, you had to print thousands of them, and then you had to sell all the thousands of them for it to make you any money. So nobody ever did short runs because there's just way too expensive. But with the invention of digital printing, now you can do one at a time. You can do 10 at a time, short runs, crazy, crazy ability to do colors on your invitations. And I love these for things like save the dates. I love these for small parties. I love these for showers. Again, I'm a paper snob, so I'm not too particular about them for wedding invitations, because to me a wedding invitation is like a historical document. It's like the pizzazz of paper. So if somebody is sending out something like this for a shower, I kind of want my invitation to be a little more important looking. The other thing on this is you're going to see a lot of designs with dark in the background. And people come into our shop and they think that they're looking for a black paper with white printed on it, but that's not necessarily the case for 99.9% of the situations that you're seeing online. You're seeing white paper printed black, and all these colors are printed black. See if you can see, this is a white color. So whenever you're seeing something with a dark background, generally this is what you're seeing. It is digitally printed. So again, it's going to go through a press. It needs to be a thinner paper. It needs to go through quickly. And all of these colors are printed at the same time. We do have situations where we're actually printing on a dark paper, like this gorgeous invite, which I love because of the use of fonts and the graphic design, crispness. This is actually a black piece of paper. In order to do something like this, again, you've got to either engrave or foil print, because thermography printing, though it would be less expensive, thermography is not opaque, and the paper would show through and muddy your ink, and you just have a big blob on this. So this is engraved. I just really like this invite. So the ink for engraving is opaque, so it stays on top of the paper and it can cover the black like that. So very, very cool. Now another thing I wanted to cover on that was colors. Let's look at this. Again, thermography printing. Right upside down. Okay, thermography printing. We've got two colors. In thermography printing, like we were talking about the original offset printing where everything, 4 colors, each color was printed at one time. These are offset printed. Each of these other types of processes, you have a plate, so you have to print each color individually. So each color is a second run. So that's another thing that may add to your cost, well, will add to your cost. If you're adding a second color to these types of printing technologies, you're going to have to do a second run to get that second color in. So that does increase your cost. Now, I believe I've covered all of these little itty-bitty things about printing. Next time, I'm going to cover the bells and whistles of all the other stuff that you can do to your invitation and how it adds to your cost, or how you can keep things reasonably priced and get your invitations looking super gorgeous and just representing everything that you're trying to do with your wedding and your event and representing you. Alrighty? So until next time, have an absolutely fabulous day. Bye.